explain to me and give me a bit of context regarding the way you basically evolved in the Web3 ecosystem, where you're coming from, who you are, and what you're doing for Sensay.
Sure thing. So my name is Dan Thomson. I'm the CEO and founder at Sensay, which is a platform designed to create autonomous digital replicas that are indistinguishable from a real person. My background is overall a mixture of finance, hospitality, and the last 4 years, 5 years now, working full-time in Web3. My actual sort of earliest ventures into Web3 was probably around 2015 when I came across Bitcoin for the first time because I had a chain of restaurants in London and I was getting more and more fed up with payment systems. And so someone came along and said, have you heard about this digital currency called Bitcoin? And I hadn't at the time really. So they kind of gave me a quick crash course on it. And I said, that sounds fantastic. Love it. And that kind of led me down the inevitable rabbit hole of crypto. So I started off by looking into it as a form of payment, but realized the potential of it. So I was very lucky enough to, buy some Bitcoin back then. And then even more lucky to essentially lock it away from myself because I probably would have sold it a lot, quite a few times since then. I started getting more into sort of, but at the time I still had a chain of restaurants and bars to run. So my focus was really on that and not really in the sort of finance world. I ventured a bit more into Web3 space, even though it was more sort of on the retail side, as I set up one of Europe's first index funds for crypto in 2017, based out of Gibraltar. And so that was a private fund, which essentially ran as an index fund based out of Gibraltar as a co-founder and partner on the business development side. And so that was a couple of years doing that at the same time as running the restaurants and bars. Then pretty much I'd actually kind of come out of that just before the pandemic hit. And the pandemic then subsequently also closed all the restaurants and bars I had, which was quite a sad time. But at the same time, it freed me up in a way that I hadn't really been free since I was 18, 19, I guess. And so I found myself suddenly with this like newfound freedom, not much money, but enough to sort of get me to Latin America. And I started traveling in a way that I should have done when I was a lot younger. And during the pandemic, it was amazing because it was kind of this opportunity to travel when, no one else is really traveling. And during that time, I've enjoyed the first sort of six months really before my mind sort of needed something to do. And this was at this point, it was DeFi summer. So DeFi really started kicking off, and DeFi was, essentially things like when I've been in crypto before, decentralized exchanges, for example, hadn't really existed so suddenly this whole new layer to Web3 and crypto had just like exploded into the space. And so I was participating and essentially making back some of the money that I'd lost while traveling and from the previous company before I got offered a job to come on as the head of marketing and CMO and head of business development at Insurace, which is a DeFi insurance protocol based out of Singapore. I started there, and that's where I worked for the last 4 years up until I decided to would have been what was 4 years? Get my years confused. Where I'd worked as Insurace for 2.5 years before I decided to start Sensay, because Sensay was this idea that I'd had for even before I got into crypto properly in like 2017. I'd written these books around digital immortality and mind uploading, both based on my own personal philosophy and based on personal experiences. But I always like the idea of creating some form of everlasting version of ourselves, something that transcends even our own selves, and definitely gets away from the sad fact that most of us will be forgotten after 2 or 3 generations. So I went through this bit of a existential crisis when I was, let's say, 24, 25, very young to be having that, but I studied philosophy at university, so probably quite old for that. And I ended up writing these books. So the first one is called Immortality in a Digital Age. You can find it on Amazon. And the second one's called The Digital Afterlife. The first one is about this exploration of the philosophical side of whether or not, if it were possible, should we create digital copies of ourselves that could live essentially forever. And even when I wrote that, I understood that when you can create one digital replica of yourself, there's nothing stopping you creating multiple digital replicas of yourself. And so even then, and this is before DeFi really exploded, even back then, I understood that technology like blockchain technology would be vital to creating some kind of verification that your digital replica is acting on your behalf. So as soon as you give them any kind of autonomy, as soon as they can actually start doing things for you, anything that you can do online that your replica can do, you need some way of verifying that it is your official replica. And the concept of having a unique wallet tied to every person with some kind of proof of humanity and KYC, which then has any of the actions that your replica can perform all on chain, and those actions themselves can essentially be verified by the whoever they're interacting with and tie it back to the person who they are authorized to work on behalf of. So even back then, I had this tie into Web3 without even realizing it when I wrote these books. So it was inevitable that when the explosion in AI came around 2 years ago with ChatGPT 3 and 3.5, it triggered it in my own mind that I was like, okay, now I actually have to build out this technology that I wrote about all these years ago. I have to actually do this thing. And I was really enjoying working for another project. I wasn't definitely wasn't ready to go back in, especially after how, tough it had been to wrap up the previous businesses after all the time building them. But this felt bigger, this felt more important, and this was unavoidable. Otherwise, I know I would have sat back and watched someone else do exactly the same thing and would be, very sad about that. So Sensei was started by myself and a few and then I brought on the co-founders to build out this incredible technology where we are literally building this form of digital immortality by creating perfect, indistinguishable, autonomous digital replicas of ourselves that can interact with the world around us, saving us a huge amount of time day to day, but also will exist long after we unfortunately leave this planet. So it's a lifelong story that combines my philosophy from university, my personal experiences, and there's plenty of stories there about my own brushes with mortality. I live a quite adventurous life and lots of extreme sports in there. So definitely had a few close calls along the way. Combined with the books I wrote, combined with my experience in Web3 and tech over the last few years, and the desire to share my knowledge, my stories, my adventures, and with not just the people around me now, and build a really useful tool for people to use now, but also for generations to come. Like if my great grandkids want to have a conversation with me and get to know me, who I am, and they want to learn about what I did in my life, that will be possible for their generation. Whereas I unfortunately can't do the same with my great grandparents. So it's a really incredible tool for transcending generations, but also, in terms of the applications of the technology here and now. And, that all becomes possible because of AI and Web3.
Precisely on this matter, AI plays a big role in the development and in the creation of your products and the evolution of your business. Now AI is also a thing that we hear a bit everywhere these days, especially in Web3, especially like in tech in general, but specifically in Web3 is used and overused a bit for any kind of usage. In your case, what do you see? How do you see it evolve? Like, what do you think is the limits? What is the actual AI revolution going to look like? Where is it going to happen, etc.? And in a second time, more like apply to your project. How are you going to use AI? How are you using AI? And how are you prepared for the evolution linked to the AI? Where are you on the AI ecosystem, basically?
That's a great question. AI in general does get thrown around far too much, but itself, in its own language, is quite broad. AI does get used by a lot of companies that are using AI now, and argue, and to be fair, probably were before, but I think now that AI has become the buzzword, everyone has to be using AI in some form or another, otherwise they're falling behind, whether or not they were already integrating with it or not. I think it does get used in a lot of ways that are simply wrappers on other tech. And so the applications of it could easily be wiped out. And I think we're moving faster and faster towards a day and age where an entire application of software could be built through one simple prompt to a sufficiently good LLM. And LLMs are themselves are fantastic tools, but they're not necessarily the way we achieve AGI or ASI moment of artificial intelligence and how we're going to get there, what's going to happen. I mean, we're still quite far away from where AI has the same capabilities of a human brain. I think we're getting there. Don't get me wrong, it's getting much better. And the ability of how we can apply the technology to our day-to-day lives is incredible already. I mean, I think everyone at this point, especially anyone probably listening to this, has used AI for everything from content creation to simple educational aspects or just day-to-day sort of referencing, translation, pretty much anything you can think of online. So there's been so many different applications of it already. I think the really wow moment will probably become in the next stage of it, because at the moment it's a fun gimmick and it's a time saver, but the reality is it's still a little bit limited, and there's lots of AI developers out there and lots of software companies that are really finding a hard product to sell that justifies the cost of actually operating the AI, which in itself is not necessarily cheap at scale. So the real wow moment, I think, is going to come when there's some agency to it, right? When you can say something like, I don't know, the equivalent of asking Siri to order you a pizza, and it would know the pizzas that you want, it'd know how many, and it would go away, order them all, and have it delivered to your door. And so you wouldn't actually have to do anything else. It's literally just a case of, one-stop command. Unfortunately, we do live in an age where, while on the one hand we have lots of people creating incredible things, art, drone display, fascinating tools with AI, you've also got the other half who are using a lot of AI to weaponize it against other people, and that's where we as a as a species are quite short-sighted and very unfortunate that we live in that kind of world where that's even a consideration. Where faced with this incredible technology, the only thing we can think of is how do we stop people using it to blow us up, and how do we use it to blow other people up? And that's the true tragedy of all of this. We have never been closer to this incredible self-sufficiency and incredible age where this technology provides for us like never before, provides for us in a way that we couldn't even imagine 5 years ago, let alone before that. But having a tool that can figure out some of life's biggest questions and problems, having a tool that can find efficiencies in everything we do, especially in key industries, agriculture, mining and shipping, so that we have available to us everything we could ever need to survive as a human race. Having AI that can serve as medical assistance that, combined with your wearables, can give you specific medical advice to you as an individual, so that we can all live longer, healthier, while understanding our own bodies better and not having to go to pharmacists and doctors who are paid off by, pharmaceutical companies to recommend products that they're paid to recommend. All of this combines into this just incredible, advancement that we unfortunately might never get to see because of our own lack of imagination. But yeah, I think the wow moment is a few of those actually that I've mentioned. The biggest one I think will actually probably be it's either going to be somewhere between literally fixing world hunger and AI doctors. AI doctors that are personal, can constantly monitor your blood and liquid levels and any hormones, any other spikes in brain activity and oxygen levels, everything in your body that indicates health and reaction to certain things, means we're going to identify issues on an individual level much faster, so that we're much better in tune with our own bodies, and will enable us to essentially live like much healthier, happier lives, because we'll be able to order the food that we still enjoy, but know that it's going to be good for us and not, fill our body with toxins and bad reactions.
And in your case, more specifically related to Sensei, can you maybe simplify a bit the way you guys use AI and how it's integrated within the product, basically?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, I went off a bit of a tangent there. Yeah, so how Sensei helps us in that next generation is exactly that. So when with the AI really expanding into everyday use and the common sort of use of these agents, having your own personal replica becomes like having a personal assistant that it knows exactly what you're looking for, that it knows exactly who you are and can answer things for you. So all of the mundane tasks, all of the things that you wish you didn't have to do, but you know, kind of have to do or happy to do, it can do for you. So, for example, even now, the tech is getting there. It's an early stage, but it works. So even now, my replica is already good enough that it can reply as if it were me to Telegram messages, and it drafts my emails for me. So we've got this as early versions of our tech, and it will be available to the public in the next month or so. But my replica, trained on my knowledge, my understanding, my documentation, basically, you know, everything that is me online, can reply as if it is me and to direct Telegram messages, and will also draft all my email responses every day. So it means that no longer do I have to spend time like reading and writing them out. I can just edit them before they get sent out. And it means that my, you know, while I'm on a call or an interview or something like this, my team isn't blocked because they don't have the relevant information from me to be able to operate efficiently. How we, you know, see ourselves in the future, where everyone has their own replica going forward, is just this amazing tool that anyone can use anytime to actually react on their behalf. You know, everything from matchmaking to job hunting to basic emails and messaging to simple replies that, you know, we get asked a lot of stuff every day that's the same questions by different people or from the same people. So by quickly giving them access to that information without having to spend time reading and digesting every single message, where we live in a world where there's just, you know, we're drowned in messages all day long, every day. So by, you know, enabling a version of us to answer for us as if it is your own perfect personal assistant, you know, makes a lot of sense. And personal assistants were always the tool of senior executives in big companies, and they're there for a good reason, because they save time and they let you work on the things that are most important to you. And, you know, replicas act in the exact same way based off of your own sort of knowledge and experience and skills that you train it on.
Makes sense. One more question related to AI. The way we talk about it these days, most of the time, is mainly associated with the question of intellectual property and data protection. I mean, data management in general. What is your take on this? How do you see that evolve? I know most of the question these days relies and talks about and focuses on generative AI, which is not specifically what we're talking about here. But in general, something that is generated by an AI or something that is improved or enhanced by an AI, who owns the data? Where is the data going? What do we do with the data protection? And same with the paternity of the art pieces or of the things that are done by AI. What do you think?
Yeah. So it is extremely difficult to quantify, to exactly explain who, you know, who should, and that's why it keeps going around and around in circles, right, in these kind of conversations. So when the AI generates new messages based off of training data that comes from individuals throughout sort of history or any kind of open source data, there is an ego element from certain individuals where they think, oh, my data is being used to, you know, train these replicas on, and that data is valuable to me and it's personal data. And they're not wrong. That is their IP, and if it is out on the internet and open source, or it's been scraped, you know, illegally, then that becomes very difficult. But it also becomes extremely difficult to find out exactly whether or not it was scraped in the same or taken illegally, and then based on that information to then generate new knowledge and new content, whether it's images, whether it's text, whether or not it's based off of an artist or a writer or some individuals out there. To say that it is the ownership should translate to the individual is based off of is very, very difficult, because it's taking into account a lot of different things, and the process is a lot of context that goes into the outputs, not just that one writer or that one person. Sometimes it can be forced down a rabbit hole by, you know, saying act as a certain person, and then you get into this whole issue of identity and privacy, and then something acting as someone, and that's something we deal with a lot, because, you know, that's a lot of what we had to face. But in terms of the generated content belonging to anyone, I don't think it should. I think that when it comes to AI, you're taking essentially pattern recognition from humanity, and sure, there are certain people who are more distinguishable than others. I mean, if you take Trump's tweets, for example. It's a very distinguishable way of reading someone, as opposed to, I don't know, let's say a Morgan Freeman, who is recognizable by his voice, but not necessarily by the way he writes. Likewise, Gordon Ramsay, who you could probably recognize by the language he uses, but again, in those sort of situations, you see their sort of television personalities and the personality they put out on social media. But do you think that they are really like that in person? Probably not. It's probably more of a persona they put on. So when it comes to the actual generation of the text or images or videos based off of those training models, the IP becomes extremely blurry, because do you count the generative model as its own entity? Do you count it based off of the individual? And even the concept of individual sort of IP and writing style, we are ourselves combinations of the lessons we've learned along the way, the teachers we've had, the styles we've read, and the adaptation from that. So, in ourselves, our own sort of IP and ownership, just because we were the ones who happened to write it without crediting the people we learned from. In my mind, and I see this as a kind of a creative, but not creative in that sense. For me, I don't think it's any different from us learning for ourselves and adapting historical texts and learnings and knowledge into our own style. And so, in the same way that we do that, if AI is doing basically exactly the same thing, I think if that's taken into account, then the AI itself should be the owner. But if the AI itself is an owner, then that it should be treated as its own kind of entity, not the individuals. And it all, at the end of the day, it all kind of boils down to the fact that we all sacrifice convenience we sacrifice our own privacy and IP for convenience and publicity, right? So a lot of the reason these people are famous is because they put themselves out there, they put themselves on camera, they did all the interviews, they did all the stuff that becomes open source data that suddenly becomes scrapable for these large language models, and therefore can generate it from them. And sure, there are a couple of examples that have been found where it's referencing specific books or specific works, and that becomes a bit easier to say that's not okay. But for the vast majority of generated text, it is based off of things that are publicly available anyway. Anyone could adapt for themselves. If I asked a AI to draw a Mona Lisa from the Mona Lisa, how would that be any different from me taking a photo of it and printing it out for myself on my own wall? I mean, or even trying to draw it. I say taking a photo because my art skills are terrible, but I think if I were to, try and paint it myself, if it were to be remotely half decent, then, what's to say that's any different from an AI generating it from someone else's work?
Yeah, that's very true. Maybe to finish very, very briefly, is there anything that you want to highlight in terms of the news that we can expect from Sensay? What are the next updates? Any hot topics? Any teasing you want to make?
Yeah, so we last month we actually we did a demo day where we showcased some of our latest developments. So we've just launched interactive replicas, so you can actually have a live conversation with a talking video Dan bot, and can interact with Dan bot live and talk to it, and it will talk back to you, which is incredible. So coming to a Google Meet near you very soon. We've launched our autopilot on Telegram, so you can have your replicas interact with people on your behalf on Telegram. We've got our Discord bot coming out very, very soon, and we've got our email drafter coming out very, very soon for public as well, which is super exciting. For our next big updates, keep an eye out for middle of November at Web Summit. We've got something really, really huge coming out to demo and launch at Web Summit. So we're super excited for that. And yeah, for anyone else who wants to get involved with Sensay, we did our fundraising through Sensay Token earlier in the year. All that's been vested out now. Sensay Token forms a part of our ecosystem, as each replica will be minted as an NFT and will be able to be traded using the Sensay token on the platform in the not too distant future. The main thing really is just get involved in the conversation. Our website is sensay.io. That's SENSAY, and you can find any of our social media at Ask Sensay. Or myself on most social media at Sensay Dan. It's a really incredible time. I mean, the next 2 years, 3 years, in terms of like AI and development in general, and Sensay's development on the whole, specifically, is going to be a really fascinating time to be around this kind of technology and see how fast things develop and grow in this incredible sort of space that we're in.
Perfect. Thank you very much.